Hello class and welcome to HRM. In this lecture we're going to be covering Module 12, which addresses HRM and social responsibility and its relationship to ethics. So let's get started. Social responsibility, or what's commonly known as corporate social responsibility, is a theory that asserts that businesses have more of a responsibility than just simply fulfilling the wishes of the stockholder. More specifically, they state that organizations have a responsibility to, some argue moral responsibility, some argue because they're not a living person, they can't have a moral responsibility. But either way, the idea behind social responsibility is that organizations have an obligation to society. And this could come in the form of the local community. It could come in the form of the environment, because the actions of an organization, particularly a large organization, can have huge implications for the environment of those, our natural environment, and certainly the local environment that people live and exist in. They have a responsibility to society, to follow the law, and they have a responsibility to government, to pay taxes, and to contribute. So the idea of social responsibility is that the obligation of a company to primarily be a mechanism for earning money or earning financial returns for its owners, that's not the only priority. Some may even argue that it shouldn't be the primary priority of the organization, but that these other stakeholders, if you will, the company has a strong obligation to take care of them as well. Now, when it comes to HR is one of the key departments in an organization that's responsible for contributing to a firm's ability to deliver on social responsibility. Now, I want to point out here that there are some people who argue against social responsibility. And in fact, they argue that the only responsibility or social responsibility a company has is to maximize shareholder wealth. The argument there proceeds as follows. If a company is maximizing shareholder wealth, meaning that they're doing any and everything in their power to grow the company, to make the company more successful, more profitable, then that company is constantly growing. And in doing so, they're earning more revenue, which means they're paying more in taxes. They are hiring more people, which means that they're helping society out by providing jobs so that people can support their families. Those families in turn spend money at the local grocery stores, pay school taxes, they buy houses, and so on and so forth. So the sheer success of the organization is its contribution to society. Now, this is one argument, and that argument, I'd say in the last 15, 20, 30 years or so, has really lost favor. And now you see organizations truly embracing the idea that, yes, we need to make a profit. Yes, we need to be profitable for our stockholders, but we also have an obligation to other people, and we're going to do that. So we're going to offer scholarships to deserving students. We're going to provide food to homeless people. Tyson gives away about 20,000 tons of chicken every year as illustration. Various companies offer the employees paid time off to go and join Habitat for Humanity and to contribute that way as well. So I think that the judgment call is out there in terms of today, in today's business environment, that social responsibility is something that's important and is here to stay. Moreover, it's not just a marketing gimmick, but it's something that we truly believe in and that we want to be associated with our companies. Now let's take a closer look at social responsibility. R.T.B. Carroll, he's a noted scholar. He has proposed a framework for understanding social responsibility. And this framework consists of 4 different stages: economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibilities. And he argues that these stages proceed in order, but economic being the first stage and philanthropic being the last stage. And he says that first and foremost, an organization must be economically viable. So before you start worrying about giving away money or giving away resources or getting involved in any type of social responsibility activities, you need to make sure that your financial house is in order. Are you profitable? Or if you're a nonprofit, are you making enough money to cover your operating expenses? The second obligation of a company is legal responsibility. Now, as we discussed in previous lectures, there's a big difference between the law and ethics. The law, if you think of that as the guidelines for society, violations of the law result in fines, imprisonment, things along those lines. Ethics governs groups or it could be a company. That's why you say the company culture and the company ethics. We don't say your country's ethics, we say the company's ethics, but the laws that govern the country. So Carroll argues that you must follow the law. The organizations must follow and do what's legal. Next, he says that, hey, you should develop a company culture that goes beyond the law, because the law is kind of like the basic foundation of what's right, or it should be that way. Now, we all know that the law doesn't always uphold what's right, but the framework, the idea behind it, that the law sets the foundation for what's right, but we as individuals, we as groups, can choose to go further than what the law says. So the law may say, you can't breach a contract, but our ethics say that we're going to design the contract in a way that is fair for all parties. So beyond a legal responsibility, you have an ethical responsibility to do what is right. Now the question of what is right comes into play, but you need to go back and listen to some of the, well, take a look at our next slide. We're going to actually discuss moral relativism and some of those things, which can help give us an idea of how do we gauge the morality or the ethicalness of a particular action. The last stage, according to Carroll, is philanthropic. Now here, he's saying that now you're actually going to engage in giving away resources. Maybe you're doing scholarships. Maybe you're having community picnics. You're going to engage in activities that you otherwise don't need to, or that are not necessarily bringing in revenue for the organization. So these are philanthropic, and these are the 4 stages of social responsibility. It's important to also note that Carroll defines social responsibility by the last 2 stages in his framework. So that's ethical responsibility and philanthropic responsibility. Those 2 stages combined is what he defines as social responsibility. Earlier, I gave you an argument that people have that goes against social responsibility. So if we're looking at these 2 arguments side by side, both Carroll's framework of social responsibility and the critics of social responsibility agree on Carroll's first 2 principles, economic and legal responsibility. Where they diverge or differ or have contrasting views is on the last 2 stages of Carroll's framework, ethical responsibility and philanthropic responsibility. Now let's move on to the next slide. In this slide, we're talking about a very important concept, moral relativism. And it's important to note that moral relativism argues that there's no such thing as objective morality. In fact, a person's actions is determined to be either moral or not moral by the belief set of the person who's committing the action. Similarly, you could be watching the action of another person and you're going to judge that action, and you're going to judge it according to your own personal beliefs and morality, and you may come to the conclusion that it either is or isn't moral. So the point here is that there's no such thing as objective morality, and what's right is truly in the eyes of the beholder. Now, this is a very dangerous framework, and you'll find people will use it all the time. Well, for me and my culture and where I come from, it's okay to do X. Well, in your culture, it may not be okay to do X. Or in your religion, it's okay to do Y. But in my religion, it's not okay to do Y. So I'm not going to pass judgment on you, and you're not going to pass judgment on me, and that's the best way we could try to get along when we both believe that we're morally correct in some behavior or action. Well, this concept is very dangerous, and all you need to do is look at the major headlines going on in the news right now to understand how dangerous this idea of moral relativism is. Now, I also argue that no one is smart enough. There's no person that exists now or in the past that is capable of developing a solid framework of rules that could be deemed across time, across cultures, across age groups, to be an objective set of moral laws. Now, depending on your religious beliefs, you may want to argue and debate that point, but therein you just proved my point. That's your religious beliefs. A person who has a different set of religious beliefs may not adhere to those same rules, which is a very interesting and difficult argument that we have to solve as far as society, and how do we determine what's good and what's bad, or does good or bad even exist? Well, we do have some guidance from some of our most famous philosophers. One such is Immanuel Kant, and he provides 2 maxims, and he argues that if you judge your behavior by these 2 axioms, or you ask yourself these 2 questions and honestly evaluate your decisions or actions and behaviors according to these, you'll be able to have a good idea whether that's a moral action or not. And his two maxims are roughly stated are as follows. Would you be okay with this action or behavior if everyone in the world were to do that same thing to you? And if the answer is yes, well, congratulations, you're on your way. Whatever you're doing probably is moral. If the answer is no, stop right there. What you're doing is not moral and can arguably be, it's not ethical either, right? In some objective sense of the matter. The second question or maxim that he proposes is, are you treating people as a means to an end, or are you treating them as an end unto themselves? Now, this sounds very poetic, so let me break it down. What he's saying is that if you're engaged in a situation, are you respecting all persons that are involved because they are human, they are alive, or they deserve respect because they're involved? Or are you treating that person as just a way to get to the next step, as a stepping stone? So they have no inherent respect or dignity that they deserve. You're just treating them, you're using them to get to the next step. Let me give you an example. Let's say as a professor, I really want to get a good rating from the students at the end of the semester. So I tell them, hey, you guys, I really want to get good marks from you, so I give grades out very loosely. So it doesn't matter whether you're learning the content or not. What's most important is that you're going to give me the grade that I want. So at the end of the semester. So what happens is the students get good grades, very easy assignments, very loose grading. The students got what they want. They're very happy. They earned an A in the class. And I also get a high mark at the end of the semester. So because I got the high marks, I got the raise, I got the promotion, I got the accolades that go along with receiving such high marks. Well, Kant would say, if you're going to look at my behavior, is that ethical or not? And you need to look at the second maxim. Was I treating the students with respect and dignity throughout that process, or was I simply using them to accomplish some other goal? Clearly, Kant would say that the actions, as I described in this example, were not moral because they were not respecting the students and what I was put there to do as a professor, but instead I was simply using them to reach some other goal that I wanted to achieve. So these two maxims are very important, and they can provide guidance, not a set of objective rules, but guidance in terms of determining whether your action or behavior is moral or not. Now, let's talk about the contrast between ethics and the law. The law, as we all understand and know, refers to the rules of the land, the rules that govern society. When a person violates the law, they're punished typically in one of two ways. Either they lose their freedom, so they're separated from society. And I think this punishment is really very interesting, very telling of us as a species. Namely that humans are communal species. We seek the company and social interaction of other people. And the ultimate punishment that we can receive, whether it's a violation of some group or a violation of society, is to be kicked out or removed from that group, to be kicked out and removed from society. And when you think about it, that's exactly what prison is. You're being isolated from society for a set amount of time or for the rest of your life, depending on the nature of the violation. But you're being separate. And the worst punishment that we can give when it comes to prison is that of solitary confinement. So not only have you been removed from society, but you're being removed from the microcosm of society, which is that prison, and you're being now kept alone. And for 23 hours a day, and then you get 1 hour out into the open sun, but no one else is there with you. And that is the worst punishment that people can receive. Research shows that people have been known to go insane, to actually lose their sanity, to commit suicide, to have psychological disorders when they are returning from solitary confinement. So when you violate the rules of society, you get kicked out of society. You get removed. It's just prison. The other form of punishment is financial. If you think about it, society has to find a way to punish everybody in a way that's meaningful, in a way that everyone will want to avoid this particular outcome. And there's one, other than freedom, there's one other thing that all people regard as important, and that is their money. So certain punishments, you receive penalties or fines. So for example, say you're driving and you're caught going 20 miles over the speed limit. Well, you're going to get a ticket. You're going to have to pay money for that. And the idea here is that if that money is large enough, it will be a deterrent. It'll actually encourage you to follow the law as opposed to violating the law. So that's what happens when you get when you violate the laws of society, how does ethics differ from that? Well, ethics refers to the rules, the guidelines that are associated with governing a group. So society is comprised of a number of subgroups. It could be families, organizations, departments, fraternity groups, any number, church groups, any number of groups that exist within society. They all have their own set of rules and guidelines that they expect their members to adhere to. Well, that's what ethics is. Ethics reflects the culture and the rules and policies set forth by any subgroup within society. Now, what's important to note is that the laws in society really only go so far as to interfering or providing direct guidance for your day-to-day life. But the ethical group, the rules that are associated with groups like ethics, they can go much further. They can be much more intrusive in your day-to-day life. Think of it like you're involved in a Christian group or a religious group. That the rules there not only just simply stop, they don't stop at your front door. They actually go into your home and they provide guidance on what you should or you shouldn't do, how you should raise your children, how you should treat your spouse, how you should treat, your animals, friends, families. They can provide rules that go far beyond the law. Question to ask here is, what happens when a person violates the rules or violate the ethics of the group that they're a member of? Well, just like with society, the worst punishment you will receive is that you'll be removed from the group. So you're no longer allowed to. So if you violate the rules that are associated with the organization, for example, then you're fired, you're terminated. And what's interesting is that a lot of times people may not even, they may want to leave the company. It's like, I don't like my job, I'm ready to go. However, when they get fired, they still feel that it's a punishment, and it still makes them feel unhappy. So this concept of being removed from a group is very much a human dilemma, and it is a very strong sense of punishment that we apply to people. That wraps it up for this lecture. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Feel free to email me or give me a ring. Thank you very much. Have a great day.